All right, we're recording, guys. So repeating what I was saying, okay? Like I said, I think the reason why this talk is so important is because in many places and organizations, they try to avoid talking about their feelings as much as possible. I mean, even in my own organization, sometimes my staff is going to avoid talking about it because, well, who the heck wants to talk about their emotions? Okay, it is way easier to avoid those things. Okay, and this is why I think this is so important, because there is a daily challenge of dealing with our emotions, because our brains are hardwired to give emotions the upper hand. Okay, so let me go ahead and get into this. I'm just gonna dive straight in. Perfect. Okay. So like I said, our brain is actually hardwired to give our emotions the upper hand when it comes to things. So this is your brain. Congratulations, okay? Everything you experience is going to start right down here at spinal cord, okay? So it all is going to enter here. Yes, this is a very simplified image for some of my people who are like, is that what the brain looks like? Yes, it is. Okay. So all of your experiences, your feelings are going to enter in through here. Okay. And then they're going to travel all the way through your brain until they come up here. Okay. The trouble is they have to pass through your limbic system first. Okay. This is where your emotions are produced. So for those of you who are thinking you can just ignore your emotions or just not feel those things, okay, you are wrong. Okay. These areas influence each other. Okay, the limbic system and your frontal cortex, okay, or the rational part of your brain. They influence each other. Okay, they communicate to each other, and these are the keys to your EQ. Okay, these are the keys to your emotional quotient. That's what EQ stands for, by the way, is emotional quotient. Okay, and they are also the key to the whole picture of you. Okay, if we're making a whole entire piece of you or a piece of Jeremy, that's going to include his IQ, his personality, and his EQ. Okay, these three things are super important to develop who you are as a person. And when you try to ignore one part of this, you are missing out on so much of yourself when you try to hide these emotions away or not utilize them or just pretend like they're not there. Okay, so getting into the big things that I always want to talk about, and I will then just be sharing my screen for majority of this talk. Okay, in most organizations, leaders will lead or talk from their head and ignore any feelings. Okay, but great leaders, whether this is in an organization, in your life or just in your community, okay, or even just in your own relationships, okay, great leaders, conscious leaders, learn how to access and lead from all three centers of intelligence. That's the head, the heart, and the gut. Okay, now if you do want some more info on, like, at least where I'm getting my information when it comes to emotional intelligence, okay, the book that I at least personally like when it comes to this is The 15 Habits of Conscious Leadership. Some of it's also from Emotional Intelligence 2.0, but I think the reason why I like this book as a start for most of you is because it talks more about emotional literacy than it does emotional intelligence. So I'm sorry, the talk is actually more about emotional literacy, because I feel like that is actually the first step, okay, is becoming aware of what your feelings are before you can actually become emotionally intelligent. Okay, so as I said, most leaders rely on their head and they neglect their heart, which is where most of our emotional intelligence is going to come from. Conscious leaders value their feelings. They know that's where they get their greatest resources in decision making, team building, and creativity. Other organizations want to ignore emotions and focus on just the facts, okay? Because the feelings get in the way of great decision making and cluster what's really important. And that's what people tend to think. But that's absolutely insane to think that way. I think it's absolutely insane, at least, to think that way, because Mauricio can't go his whole entire life feeling no emotion. Like, I just have to think rationally all the time. And we've already seen that's impossible, okay? Because he's going to feel it first before it's going to pop into the rational part of his brain, okay? And so utilizing and learning how to actually deal with your emotions instead of trying to ignore them is going to be a great skill to have. Okay? Because, like I said, ignoring your emotions is impossible to live. It's impossible to lead. And especially for those of you, since you are on key staff, you want to be able to lead in some form. Okay? And we already know in Vector that we want to lead from the heart. Okay? Make sure when we lead, we come from a place of caring about our people. Okay? Caring about our customers. And that is a place of emotion. And that's where our best leadership comes from, is just caring about others and what we're doing. Hey, you lose a great resource when you aren't using your emotions and you don't feel your feelings. Okay, so the first question that I have for you guys, okay, is are you willing to feel your feelings? And the first question I have for you guys is, are you willing to feel your feelings? Okay, now for those of you who may be sitting here, okay, you're kind of on the fence, or you're not even sure why you're at this talk. You're like, Kristina, like, what is going on? Like, who wants to talk about emotions? None of this makes any sense. I don't really get the importance of it. Okay, then I want to go into just a couple numbers for you guys. So first, just defining these things so that that's important. Okay, IQ basically measures your ability to solve problems, use logic, and grasp or communicate complex ideas. EQ measures your ability to recognize emotion in yourself and others and to use that awareness to guide your decisions. Okay, so if you're thinking that EQ is not important, a career builder survey of more than 2,600 US hiring managers actually showed that over 71% of employers value emotional intelligence in employees over IQ. Okay, and 34% of them admitted to placing greater emphasis on EQ when hiring and promoting employees. And nearly 60% of them said they'd pass on a candidate who had a really high IQ but a low EQ. And this is why my opinion is that EQ, okay, is just as important, if not more important, than IQ. But a really cool thing that at least I think is cool, okay, is that EQ, okay, is something that you can actually grow and change, because IQ is something that you're born with. There's not much you can do when it comes to shifting or changing or growing your IQ, okay? But EQ is something that you can grow, you can develop, which means you can continuously work to improve this. It's a skill that you can get better at. Now, one can argue, like I said, before you become emotionally intelligent, that you must first become emotionally literate. And so I want to get into the two steps the two steps to develop clear and an accurate definition of emotional literacy and emotions. Okay, so there are literally only two steps when it comes to becoming emotionally literate. Okay, because most of you haven't really experienced where people are like, it's okay to feel your feelings. Okay, most of you have probably experienced the exact opposite, where it's like, oh, well, just put that away and deal with it later. Okay, most of you experience it that way. Okay, so I want to make sure that you guys understand first the bare minimums when it comes to emotional intelligence. All right, so here are the two steps. Okay, here are the two steps to developing emotional literacy. Number one is first having a clear and accurate definition of emotion. The first step is having a clear and accurate definition of emotion. So just asking yourself, what is a feeling? What's emotion? what are these things? Okay, the way I like to think about it, and I think that makes it easy for a lot of people, is it's just energy in motion. Okay, that's what it says, emotion. Okay, they're just feelings or energy in or on our body, just moving around. That's all it is. Because I think when you simplify it like this, it allows you to take away all the biases for emotions. Okay, oh, there's good or bad feelings. When you just think about it as energy in your body that's doing stuff, okay, it'll allow you to kind of conceptualize it a little bit better. The second step is identify core emotions and name them. And we're going to get into that. I have a couple steps to help you guys with this. Okay, but that's the second thing, is identify using your core emotions, and then we'll name them. Okay? So, most of the time, as I said, your emotions are going to appear as sensations in your body. Sometimes people do confuse emotions with thoughts, okay? And they even think their emotions are thoughts, okay? I do want to make it really clear, okay? Your emotions are not thoughts. Just in case you're wondering, your emotions are not thoughts. They don't start with I think, okay? And I know I said, yeah, they come from your brain, but they don't start in your head. Okay, you don't think you're feeling. You are feeling. Okay, because they're going to show up on your body first. And for those of you who are still on the fence, you may actually be able to understand it here. Okay, like when you feel angry, And when you feel angry, you may start to feel like a tightness in your shoulder or your jaw. Okay. And I know for me it may sound weird, but like I actually feel anger. It starts like in my shoulders and it'll like work its way down into my fingertips, but it's usually because I have road rage and so I hate driving. So that's where mine starts to like come from. Is definitely from there. And I can feel it move down my arms. Okay. Just so I, can tell everybody's kind of engaged. If you want to share, and when you feel angry, where do you feel those things? Okay, join me in the chat box. When you feel angry, where do you feel those things? If you've actually started to think about it. Okay. Now, when you get sad, jaws and hands, yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so you have experienced this before. Now think about when you get sad. Okay, you feel it behind maybe your eyes, or you get like a tightness in your throat. Okay, when you get scared, you maybe feel it in the pit of your stomach. Okay, if you didn't relate to the anger one, then you could share with me the other feelings. Okay, but none of these started as thoughts. They all started as sensations in your body. And conscious leaders learn to connect their body and learn what it is trying to tell them. But sensations come and go. Okay? Sensations come and go. Okay? Like I said, your body is trying to tell you things. And typically, honestly, these sensations will only last about 90 seconds if we allow them to. Okay? They only last 90 seconds if we allow them to. Our body knows how to naturally release them, okay? But I want to share something with you guys that may be revolutionary for some of you, okay? And I said it already, but I want to make sure that it's clear, is that emotions are neither good or bad, okay? Emotions are neither good or bad. They just are, and they just do what they need to. It's like you breathing in and out. Okay? Some people try to only feel the good emotions. Okay? And they don't want to feel the bad emotions. I only want to be happy. Okay? I could just be happy all the time. That'd be great. I only want to be happy. I don't get angry. Okay? I don't get sad. I don't feel those things. Okay? They want to do away with the bad emotions. Okay? But when you try to do that, you are now overriding or trying to override the emotion. You're trying to override what your body naturally does. Okay? I don't feel sad. I don't feel mad. Okay? I don't have time for those emotions. I had talked to another manager a couple weeks ago. He was like, well, I just don't have time to like be sad about stuff or be mad about stuff. He's like, I have to work. Okay? It'll drag me down if I actually take the time to feel these emotions. Okay? Or for some of you, you have this feeling attached to somebody else. Okay? I don't want to be like so-and-so because they're terrible when they get mad. I don't get mad because I don't want to be like that. And this will end up causing a lot of suffering because now it's like you've kinked a hose and you're forcing the energy to stay there. Instead of naturally releasing it like it's supposed to, you're sitting in these emotions. Now they recycle. Now they repeat. And then you get into a pit or you slip into a funk because you're not letting your body do what it's supposed to do. Okay? Has anybody ever experienced this? It's okay, you could be honest. It's like, I just ignore these feelings and then it like gets worse. Okay, thank you for those of you who are honest. So I want to get into the 7 steps to release an emotion. And I know it looks like a lot of steps. I promise it not. Some of these are really quick. Okay, I'll be able to go through them relatively quickly. Okay, but I'm going to get into the 7 steps on how to release an emotion. So the first step is to commit. Basically what I asked you guys at the start of this talk. Are you willing to feel your feelings? Most unconscious leaders, okay, they consider it below the line, but most unconscious leaders are not willing to do that. They resist their emotions. They judge them. They apologize. They repress and avoid all their emotions. Okay? If you don't do the first step of just committing of like, all right, I got to feel the feelings, Everything else doesn't really matter. Okay? So that commitment of like, yeah, I'm willing to feel my feelings. Okay? Number 2 is to name it. And you can use the ones I have here because, like I said, these would be the 5 core emotions. And I'll even go through and share an emotions wheel to help you guys out. And then I'll put some resources in the manager chat and they can share them as they would like. Okay? I know the emotions wheel. Everybody loves it. Okay? Okay, now the 5th feeling, just a heads up, is stated differently in the book. Okay, but for a work setting, I think creativity covers it. Okay, now, like I said, second step is to name it. Okay, what are you feeling? That's actually one of my favorite questions. If you've ever had a phone call with me before, Leo knows. Okay, I don't ask, how are you feeling? Okay, I don't like that question. How are you feeling? Because when you ask somebody, how are you feeling? What do they say? Almost always. They're like, I'm good. Okay? You're like, oh, how are you feeling? I'm good. I'm all right. I'm doing okay. Nobody ever tells you what they're feeling. And that's why I like to ask instead, what are you feeling? And especially when I can tell somebody's like not having the best day. Like, Kristina, what are you feeling? Okay? Like, ugh. And people hate this question. It's the funniest thing ever. People hate this question. Okay? Because you ask, what do you feel? And they're like, it's because like nobody's ever asked them, what are you feeling? Okay? One of my favorite conversations, I remember after I had taught this with one of my reps, Kristina, as I accidentally had said, how are you feeling? Instead of what are you feeling? I went, oh, how are you feeling? And she went, oh, I'm good. Okay. And I was like, oh, wait, sorry. I meant to say, what are you feeling? Okay. And so she paused and she went, I'm actually feeling kind of frustrated and annoyed. She's like, I'm also happy. She's like, but I'm frustrated and annoyed. Okay. And I remember sitting there and I was like, that's so funny. Like, literally, she just said, oh, I'm feeling good. But what she was actually feeling was frustration and being annoyed. She was still happy, but like there were other emotions that were in there. Okay? But good doesn't really encapsulate that. Okay? Isn't that interesting? How if you just ask somebody how they're feeling, they'll automatically be like, yeah, I'm good. Okay? And you don't even expect a bad answer when you're asking it too. Okay? You're just like, okay, cool. Sounds good. But if you really want to dig in with people, ask them what are they feeling. Okay? And sometimes it's even funnier on this one, is people will give me a thought, like I said, instead of an emotion. Okay? Well, I feel like we're getting away from the point, Kristina. Well, I feel like this isn't working. Okay? If I feel like isn't followed with some sort of emotion, one of the 5 core emotions, then this is not an emotion. This is a thought. Okay? If you say, I feel like, okay, these are thoughts, opinions, beliefs, and or judgments. These are not feelings. So if you're trying to figure out how to just easily express it, this is the way to do it. You say, I feel, followed by the 5 core emotions. That's it. Okay? I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel scared. Okay? Once you add like, I feel like, or I feel that, it is no longer a feeling. It is a thought. Okay? So, this is also an emotion wheel. I don't know if you guys can see this. That's why I'll share it later. Okay? Because I know it's kind of small. But it goes through. Now, the emotion wheel, based off of how a wheel works, it had to do 6. Okay? And so there is extra ones in there, like disgusted and surprised. Okay? Which is fine. But it basically gives you other ways to break down the emotions into bigger words. Okay? Because maybe, like, surprise isn't the word you're looking for. Okay? You're looking for, energetic. I don't know. Okay? But it gives you some other options to work with when it comes to feelings. So some of my reps will be like, well, I don't know. It doesn't feel exactly like this. Because sometimes your feelings also combine. It is okay for you to have a combination of feelings. Just like my rep, Kristina, where she was like, I'm frustrated and happy. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. All right? And so sometimes you do feel a combination of feelings. Next is to locate it. And this is where you now really start to dive into it. And next is to locate it. And this one will take some practice. Okay? I'm not going to lie to you guys because some of you are going to leave this talk. Okay? And Kai's going to be like, I'm an emotional master now. Okay? And unfortunately, you are not. I'm sorry. Because this will take some practice. Okay? Some of you, this is going to come easy for you. But for most of us, this does take some practice. Okay? On like, where am I feeling this feeling on my body? Okay, like I said, you won't all of a sudden be a master at this. I feel joy here. I feel anger here. This is what this emotion is telling me. Like, you're not going to automatically know all these things just because I gave you a quick little 20-minute talk on it. okay? But what you can start to do is start to get in tune with these emotions and start to get in tune and listening to your body, okay? This is why naming it first at this level is easier sometimes, okay? So if you can realize, like Jennifer's sitting there, well, I feel sad. Okay, cool. Well, where am I feeling it? Okay, like what's going on in my body? Just sitting for a second, like what's going on in my body? Okay, where are you feeling it? You have a tightness in your chest, a scratchy throat, pressure in the eyes. Maybe it's like, Skylar's like, I'm feeling happy. Okay? I feel good. Okay? This one's actually a really good one. And the reason I think it's important to know what these feelings are telling you, okay? Not saying that joy is a good emotion and other ones are bad, okay? But I know a lot of you would prefer to feel happiness over other emotions. Okay? And so it is really good, though, to be able to know, like, well, what does joy look like for me? Because I know when I first started, like, I was actually listening to the talk I gave in 2020, and I had literally said, like, hey, joy is a hard feeling for me to identify. Okay? And it was just being honest. It was like, hey, joy is a hard feeling for me to identify. Okay? And it was funny because I was like, man, I've experienced so much growth where, like, I know what joy feels like now. And like I can easily identify, like, wow, it's like a light feeling in my stomach, it's like tingling in my fingers. I'm like, yeah, and I just get excited. I feel happy, okay? And I know what those are. Okay, where do you feel these sensations? And what's cool about this is once you start to practice more and you get more aware of your body and what it's trying to tell you, you can actually switch 2 and 3. You can actually then use your body to identify the emotion. Okay, because you're always going to have the experience first before you actually logically figure out what's going on. Okay, has anybody ever just been like sitting and you're just like, oh man, like I feel kind of nauseous, like all of a sudden like an emotion just kind of like comes out of nowhere? Okay, has anybody experienced this? Whether it be just a sensation just comes out and you're like, what is going on? Okay, thank you. I know, like the other day I was sitting with my wife and I was like, my stomach feels weird. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I know I'm feeling something, but my stomach feels weird. Okay, and all I did was just sit with it for like a minute or two. Okay, and I was like, oh man, I'm excited. And that's all of a sudden I like was able to actually identify the emotion from the feeling on my body. And I was like, oh, I'm pumped up. I was like, we're gonna go on. It's our anniversary. Well, it was, but we're having dinner coming up. And so I was like, oh man, I'm pumped up about that. But I just didn't even realize it just came out of nowhere. Okay, and I was able to identify it instead of just brushing it off and being like, oh, I'm just nauseous. Because sometimes that's what we do. Is that like our body's trying to tell us stuff and then we just brush it off. We're like, oh, that's weird. I don't know where that's coming from. I just have a headache all of a sudden for no reason. Okay? Maybe it's your body actually trying to tell you something. It's an emotion trying to come through. Okay? So where are you feeling this? Number 4, describe it. Okay, describe it. What is it doing? Leo loves this one. I ask him, what are the bits doing? Okay, so the way the book describes this, okay, is imagine in your body, there are millions of little bits. This sounds weird, I know. Okay, but there are millions of little bits. Okay, it's basically the energy in your body. And so what are the bits doing? Like I said, for me, this just helps me conceptualize it a little bit more. Helps me visualize what's going on. Okay, are the bits like buzzing? Are they twisting? Are they pushing? Pulsing? Heating? Does it feel like pressure? Like, what are the bits doing? Because sometimes we're not able to like really identify the sensation. Sometimes you can describe the sensation. Okay? If it could be moving, what would it be doing? What are the bits doing? That's it. It's super simple. Okay? Something I also want to give a tip once we're this far. There is no right or wrong way to like do these things. Okay? I think sometimes people really get caught up in like, am I doing this right? Okay? Like, there is no, am I feeling my feelings right? Okay? You're just doing it. And I know that's hard, especially for leaders like us, where we're sitting here like, well, no, I want to be doing it the right way. Okay? I want to be like mastering these things. And we're just doing them. We're learning. We're continuously growing and we're figuring out how to do this stuff. But there is no right or wrong way to do this stuff. Okay? I'm just giving you some rough guidelines on how to do it. Next, this is probably the hardest step. Is welcome it. Welcome it. Like I said, this is typically one of the hardest steps, especially for those of you who already walked in, like, we're talking about feelings and I don't want to talk about those things, okay? It feels counterintuitive because most people want to get rid of their emotions. They're like, you said 90 seconds, Kristina. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to sit with this feeling, okay? but we want you to welcome it. Because this is one of the most important steps because, and this is probably the only thing I really want to make sure you guys write down. What we resist persists. Okay, what we resist persists, and it will often grow. Okay, what we resist persists, and it will often grow. So for those of you who did come in, like, I don't want to feel certain emotions, okay, if you ignore it, it's probably going to stay with you longer than 90 seconds, way longer, and it will get worse. I was talking, like I said, to another manager a couple weeks ago, okay, and he was like, I'm doing so much better this summer at ignoring that stressed out feeling that I was last summer. And I was literally off, I was like, what? I was like, no, he was like, yeah, I'm just doing so much better ignoring it. He's like, so I'm doing much better than last summer. He's like, but it is kind of creeping up on me. And I was like, well, have you ever just like sat with it for a second? Like let it just come out real quick? He was like, oh, no. He's like, that would totally derail everything. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be worse if you don't address this like sooner rather than later. And he's like, nah. And then like 3 days later, he calls me and he's like, oh, Kristina, I'm just feeling so burned out. I just don't want to do anything, like, at all. Because I literally just want to sit and ignore all my responsibilities. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I told you so. But, we walked through and gave him some, like, little tips on how to just feel his feelings. But it's because he never handled the emotion. And that thing must have been creeping up for a bit for the fact that it was, like, building. And he's like, oh, I'm doing really good at ignoring it. But it's creeping up. So it must have been building for forever. And so it just kept lingering. It kept recycling. And then it came back tenfold. So instead of taking the 90 seconds, maybe even 30 minutes to feel the feelings, okay, it came back and then hit him like a truck. And then he was now, feeling worse for days. So for those of you who are sitting here like, I don't have time to feel my feelings, you actually don't have the time not to. Okay, like, you have to deal with these things because they will come back. It's going to release no matter what. Would you rather be in control of the release, or would you rather it just happen spontaneously? Okay? That's when you spill a glass of milk and then all of a sudden just start bawling. And you're like, I don't know what's wrong. And it's because there's so many other feelings just compounded on top of each other. Okay? So take a deep breath, and a real breath. The one that like fills up your stomach. Okay? This helps shift you a little bit. Helps you kind of get control of what's going on. And I'm not going to say all of you are going to love every single emotion that comes in. Okay? But if you take that first step of just allowing it to be there. I think this was one of the biggest things for me when I would talk to my coach. I remember I was getting I was all over the place. I had so many feelings. My grandma was getting older. It was her birthday was coming up, and I was just feeling so many feelings. And I remember I just sat with him, and we were talking and talking and talking. And eventually I just said, I just want to be sad. Like, I haven't just gotten to be sad. And he was like, do you want to just sit and be sad? And I was like, yeah. And then that's all I did for like 5 minutes. I just sat there and I was sad. I cried and all that stuff. And then I like immediately felt better because I hadn't just let myself let these emotions out. Okay? So like I said, first step is just allowing them to be there. You don't have to love it. You don't have to accept it. It doesn't have to be the best thing ever. But can you just allow yourself to be sad? Because I think a lot of you, nobody's ever just let you feel your feelings. Nobody's ever said, hey, Alina, it's okay for you to be mad right now. They usually tell you to get over it, right? So allowing yourself, you don't have to have anybody else do it. Allow yourself to feel these feelings. That'll be the first big step in the right direction. And once you start to feel comfortable with allowing the emotion to be there, you can grow to accept it and even appreciate it, what this emotion is doing for you. Because that'll be the number 6. What I talk about is what this emotion is trying to do for you. Number 7, actually. Okay? So welcome it. Take a deep breath. Allow the emotion to be there. Okay? Allow the emotion to be there. Number 6 is to match it. Okay? Is to match it. This one's fun. Okay? This is where you're getting to the end of like getting these emotions out. If this emotion could make a sound, or if this emotion could move, what would it do? Okay? I'm sure you guys don't remember when you were a baby, but you all were babies at once. When you felt an emotion, you let it out. Okay? Just like dogs growl, cats hiss, okay? They don't think obsessively about the feeling. They match the experience, and the expression lets it out. As a baby, you screamed, you cried, you wiggled, you laughed, you moved around. Because this was the only way, as a small human, that you were able to express how you were feeling. Okay, so I'm not saying all of you should automatically revert to like Skylar's just all of a sudden screaming, emotional outburst. She's like, oh my God. And it was like, oh, sorry, I just had to get that out real quick. Like, no, you don't have to do that. I mean, you can be in control of like when you do these things now. Okay, but if it could make a sound, what would it do? Sometimes for me, mine's so simple on the movement. It's literally just from me going from like point A to point B. It's just me walking from here to there. And I'm like, that helped. I don't know why. Okay. I'm a pacer, but sometimes like literally just the one movement of walking from like this room to the other room, boom, it's gone. Okay. I'm like, that's what the emotion needed to do. It just needed to walk. It needed to go somewhere. Okay. Sometimes it's crying. I'm a huge crier. Being vulnerable with you guys, I'm like the biggest crier ever. Okay. It's okay. I think crying is important. I think there's a lot of shame that goes with crying, but crying is so important. I cry for like every single feeling. Like I could be happy, I'll cry. I'll be sad, I cry. Mad, I cry. It doesn't really matter. Okay. I'm a huge crier. And it's even taking my wife a little bit. She'd be like, oh my God, what's wrong? But like, oh no, it's okay. This is just how my emotions have to get out. I've like literally got into the acceptance where I was like, yeah, no, it's fine. This is how they get out. Okay, this is how my energy moves out of my body, is through crying. It's fine. And it took me a lot of time to come to terms with that it's fine for me to do that. Okay, for some of you, it's going to be different things. Okay, some of you, maybe it's like a jumping up and down. Maybe it's screaming into a pillow. Okay, like, I don't know what yours is going to look like. Okay, but if this emotion could make a sound, what would it do? If it could move, what would it do? Okay, and then my favorite one is to question it. Because now you basically almost completed the full cycle of releasing your emotion. Okay? But the last thing you need to ask yourself, because this is what's going to start the steps of emotional intelligence. What was this feeling trying to tell you? This one's going to help you understand your emotions as a whole, because your body is always trying to tell you something. Like I said, if you've experienced something like happening or an emotion coming, but you didn't even know where it came from, this is where you can start to build that emotional intelligence. Because it doesn't come from nowhere. Your body is trying to tell you something, and what it's trying to tell you is important. Okay? So, like anger. I know most of you, once again, we're like, I don't get angry. That doesn't happen. I don't feel anger. Okay? But anger is actually a really important one. Anger tells the leader that something is not or is no longer of service. Something needs to be changed. Something needs to end. Okay? It also could be that it's telling you that a boundary needs to be set or an existing one has been violated. Okay? If you don't have access to the feeling of anger, this can actually be dangerous because they don't have a clear no. Okay? They don't have a sword for cutting and destroying when both are called for, because sometimes we do need to end things. Sometimes we do need to change things. But if you don't allow yourself to feel this anger, your body's not able to tell you these things. Okay? Fear. Okay? Fear is usually telling you when something needs to be faced, okay, or learned. Something important needs to be known. Okay? Fear is basically your body's way of saying, like, wake up. Like, pay attention. Something's happening. You need to be aware of what's going on. Okay? Fear invites your full attention and your presence. Okay? Without fear, okay, you can kind of be dangerous to yourselves and others because you're basically like a 16-year-old that's like, I'm never going to die. Nothing's ever going to happen to me. I just do whatever I want. Like, that's wild. Okay? And some of you are still in this space. Okay? But sometimes you need to be aware. You need to watch your surroundings. You need to face something. That's what your fear is trying to tell you. Okay? Sadness. Sadness basically is that something needs to be let go. Okay? You need to grieve it. You need to move on from it. Sadness is the energy of loss, which is not always something that we want to feel or experience. But once again, it is important because it means that it is time. That's what your body's trying to tell you. Okay? Next is joy, the one everybody thinks is the good emotion. Okay? Joy tells a leader that something needs to be celebrated. It's funny that people all the time want to experience joy, but they don't actually take the time to experience joy. Okay? Something needs to be celebrated, appreciated, or laughed. Appreciate your small wins. Okay? Pat yourself on the back if you need to. Take the time to actually feel this emotion. Okay? And making sure that you understand the difference between like real joy and circumstantial joy. Are you happy because the circumstances outside of you are good? Okay? So that if the circumstances change, your feelings change? Okay? Or are you happy because you're genuinely feeling joy right now? Okay? Like you're genuinely experiencing this emotion. It's a deep experience of internal well-being. Okay? And then the last one, creativity. Like I said, the book will describe it a little bit different. But this basically tells a leader that something new wants to be made, okay? Wants to come into the world, wants to be created. Okay? So, those are your big 5 feelings, what they're trying to tell you, at least roughly. But feelings come and they go, especially if we allow them to do that. It's just like a wave. They build up, they crest, they fall, and they start over. And when you let them flow through you, you can start to process things a lot faster. This will be a skill you have to develop or a muscle you train. And the better you get at it, the closer you get to that 90-second mark for them to leave your body. But what they leave behind is a lot more wisdom and knowing. And once we start to learn more about ourselves, we can identify and even help others in this area. If you want to help someone else with this, start with yourself first and be the example that other people can look to. Okay? My family always used to laugh at me when I would talk about like emotions and feeling my feelings, blah, blah, blah. But it actually has started to like creep more into my family. Okay? When my sister will now sit there, she'll be like, well, what am I feeling? Okay? So instead of just letting these feelings recycle, it's actually taking the time to feel them. So in a nutshell, feelings are one of the universe's greatest gifts to human beings. They add richness and color to your life. And when they are understood, enjoyed, released, and even questioned, they will be your essential ally as a leader in your business, your relationships, and your future endeavors. So as I started my talk, this is how I will finish it, okay? Are you guys willing to feel your feelings? That was everything that I had. Let me stop the recording.